Everything starts in the city of Urbanstein, where there was this old guy who thought he was the greatest thing ever. Everyone around there knew him as that proud old man. He was a human who only knew one-star magic, but he went around telling people he was the Archmage, and if you doubted him, he'd start beating people up. The one telling all this is our boy. White hair, really red eyes, the kid's got style, and it was from that old man that the kid learned magic. Not for any deep reason, though. The old guy was full of himself, and wanted to play the role of some amazing teacher, and the kid just wanted to learn the basics of magic. Time passed, springs and summers, and the kid's sitting there with mana swirling around him. The old man's thinking, wait, is this kid actually starting to understand the flow of mana? Then the kid opens his eyes, magic comes out of his hand, and he conjures an arrow that sticks into a tree. From far away, the old man's just standing there breaking out in a cold sweat, totally stunned. And just like that, 1 year after he started learning from the old man, he became a one-star mage. Night falls, and the old man goes, listen kid, you need to know that in the capital, compared to Urbanstein, there are people way more talented than you. There are kids your age who are already 3-star. What I'm saying is, don't get full of yourself. Anyone could surpass what you're doing. You'll probably get stuck at 2-star anyway. The old man was always going on about how the most important thing was your lineage, your blood, that kind of stuff. The kid just wanted to eat his bread and survive, but he couldn't help thinking about how much the old man talked about the difference between people like them and nobles. And the night he reached 1-star was strangely long. The next day, it was raining, and when he came back, he found the old man dead. His body was covered in bruises, and it was obvious someone killed him. When the protagonist saw it, he figured the old man had picked a fight with someone somewhere. But a long time later, he found out the truth. The old man was beaten to death by guards because he got caught stealing a 2-star magic book from a warehouse. The protagonist couldn't understand why an old man like that, someone who never had ambition, would do something like that. But obviously we know why. The old man felt awful seeing a poor kid like him having more potential. A system window starts appearing for the protagonist while he says that, unfortunately, the old man always talked about lineage, and he never had anything like that. No noble blood running through his veins. But then he received the system, saying he had obtained the awakening of the basics of magic. He had to choose a magic specialization and it couldn't be changed. And that's when the protagonist reveals that maybe he doesn't need noble blood because he isn't from this world. After that, 4 years pass and we meet Katia Flameheart. That's what I like. Bring in a woman already. She's the former lady of a house that used to be a big deal, but these days the Flamehearts are broke. Since she was nobility, she was born as a 3-star mage, and now she had a lot of mercenaries looking for her. And since she also needed money, she started doing mercenary work too. And in the city, she met our boy and kind of hired him as well. And that's how he learned a lot from this 3-star teacher, a little older than that nasty little kid. In a house somewhere, she's telling him, since you were born with talent for magic, it's normal to dream big, but too much greed will only ruin your goals. Our boy, kind of awkward, just goes, alright, got it. Then she tells him to close his eyes and feel the mana, to calmly start noticing how it's generated. Just seeing him manifest that little blue aura, she says he really does have interesting potential. She saw good potential. Since he didn't just have practical experience, his control was stable too. He opens his eyes and gives her this intense look and all that, and she looks impressed and starts yelling. The guys in the bar even get startled, trying to figure out who's making a woman scream in a room. While the protagonist is staring at his own hand, confused, the master grabs his wrist and pulls him, telling Derek to follow her without saying a word. The people outside are all freaked out because of the yelling as they pass by. She takes the kid into an alley at night, but she tells him to listen carefully, and she warns him that he already knows how proud nobles are, and how many privileges they have. Magic to them is the greatest blessing of all, and he should start worrying about that. It's extremely rare for someone who isn't a noble to reach 3-star, and when it happens, it's someone who dedicated their whole life to it. So now it makes sense. The magic he used that scared everyone is called auditory hallucination. It made everyone hear something bizarre happening, and it was a 2-star spell, which should have been impossible for a 14-year-old kid, especially a commoner. The protagonist says that even with the risks, Katia kept traveling with him, and sometimes she'd talk about what high society was like back when she lived as a noble. A year passed and the older woman left the protagonist. She abandoned the kid. Looks like some Count Elvester invited her to be a private tutor, a powerful family in the capital that couldn't be ignored. Not even Katia, who liked her easy single life with the kid, could refuse, because becoming a tutor for a strong noble house like that was a huge opportunity. When she left, she gave our boy a 2-star magic book as a gift, and then another year passed, and he's heading out. He must have learned everything. He mastered it. The little menace. He says that at 16 he was already a big-shot mage and he had no intention of stopping. But right now we're at the Veldern's Tavern. The kid's in a tavern at 16. Most people would be thinking about ordering a cold beer, but he's actually there to take a job. The guy tells him the request came from the Duke of Duplain. He should know what that means. Derek, though, is curious why someone like that would be interested in people from this place. But the guy just tells him to stop worrying about it. It's the Duplains. They spend money like water. He should be happy. Then he grabs the kid and says, "Come on, take the job, it'll open doors, we'll be rich later." Derek tells him to just say it already. What do they have to do? The guy explains it's nothing serious, just subjugating some little monsters. Easy work. The protagonist asks if he's sure, and the guy says nobles don't lie. Why would they give some random pointless mission? The protagonist can tell something's off. Why would a family like the Duplains hire some random mercenaries? He's not stupid, so he says there's no way he's doing it. Give it to someone else. The guy asks him to wait, but Derek says to call whoever they want. He doesn't want that weird job. The boss explains he wanted to go himself, but they said they needed a mage, and he should know there are barely any mages in the mercenary group. He called the kid because he's the only one he can count on. But that just makes Derek think it's even stranger. Why would they need a mage to hunt a few monsters? Either way, it only makes him want to stay out of it. Then suddenly he catches something tossed through the air, and the guy says the Duke sent a gold coin as an advance. This isn't even the full reward. The protagonist looks at it, and then the scene switches to a butler and a little girl behind him wearing a cloak. Those are the clients, and the boss tells him to say hello. The butler wants to know why they're sending a child. He had high expectations, but apparently that was stupid. The boss says, "Well, wait. Hold on. This kid has potential. He's the toughest one I know." But the butler says, "No way, I'm putting my mission in the hands of a child." Then the woman leans in and whispers something, looks at the girl beside her, and then asks, "Your name is Derek, right? Then come on, let's talk." Now we're arriving in the Duchy of Duplain. A goblito takes an arrow to the chest. The protagonist looks up and cuts another one's head off. Another one comes at him from behind, but with one step to the side and a cold stare, another arrow to the back of the neck. Then he shocks one just to roast it for no reason. After that, he turns to the officer and says he's finished. The people who hired them are all standing there watching. Nothing suspicious at all. I see, boy. Interesting how you captured so many." And the little girl is just smiling. Here comes trouble in the protagonist's life. We're back at the tavern. A blonde woman is furious, mad that Derek became a noble's lapdog. The boss tells Polinia to calm down because they're full of customers, but she says it's stupid for a peasant to try to get involved with any kind of noble. The boss says, "For you to be acting like this, you must not know how much he got paid." She says she doesn't want to know. No amount of money is worth humiliating yourself. Then he opens his hand and she goes, "What? They paid us silver?" He says no. She freezes, suddenly excited, asking if it was a gold coin. And right away she's begging to be allowed to lick the noble's feet too. She wants to be a little lapdog as well. Time passes, she passed out, and the boss asks how it went. The protagonist says, "Nothing special, it was just killing some goblitos." The guy asks, "Weird though. Why would they pay so much to kill goblitos?" He says there's no way to know, but maybe they were lying. The boss thinks and says it's possible. But Derek says he's sure. The woman dressed like a maid had extremely smooth hands, clearly not someone who does that kind of work. He starts trying to figure out what's going on, but the boss calls his name and says, "Derek, we're mercenaries. Stop trying to snoop around noble business. Let them live their lives. You did the job, you got paid, it's done." The protagonist says, "All right." He thinks the boss is right. Better not doubt too much, not get involved in anything. If the money's made, nothing else matters. Next scene, we're back in Duplain, and the protagonist painted the grass red again. This time the boss came along and is already asking for payment. 2 gold coins in hand. He says the kid turned into a machine and it's making money for everyone. Then the butler says, "Boy Derek, you're very skilled. How about a new kind of job?" The protagonist doesn't really get it, and the old man continues, "Well, this job pays 15 gold coins. Before Derek even knows what it is, he already wants to know. Yes or no? The protagonist doesn't even hesitate. "Yes, let's go." Now they're in the carriage. Look at that huge castle. They arrive at the Duplain mansion. The boss comes along saying, "This place is for rich people. It's insane." The butler says, "Before we go in, let me introduce myself." The boss says it's fine. Why bother? They've seen each other so many times. But the old man ignores him and introduces himself anyway. His name is Delan and he's the administrator of the mansion. He apologizes for hiding his identity until now, but his job kind of requires it. The boss gets awkward, realizing the man is more important than he thought. Then the woman in the background introduces herself as Katerina. She's the head maid, the one in charge of all the others. While the boss is apologizing, embarrassed, the protagonist notices something really suspicious. This wasn't just some random person. He wasn't only in charge of the place. The woman they sent was the head maid. He already expected they weren't ordinary, but this was too much. Then someone starts stepping out of the carriage. The boss asks who that is. She pulls back her hood, her hair sways, and the protagonist is in shock. She introduces herself as Esselyn Eleanor Duplain, and she wants to invite Derek to be the teacher for her younger sister. And maybe they can teach the older sister too. The protagonist is confused. Hold on, teacher for nobles? I'm just some kid, and you're telling me all of this so far was just one chapter? Back in Duplain, in the next chapter, the door opens. Someone is calling for their father and their brother Valerius, telling them to come look at this. The father asks, "Don't you know how to act with dignity?" But the kid says the one with no dignity is Diella, that cursed maid. The maid had already started putting her hands on his servants. Valerius tells him to lower his voice because he's talking to their father. But he ignores him and tells his father that this useless maid is even destroying furniture. How long is he going to tolerate this woman's stupid behavior? Suddenly, the blonde one stands up, shouts his name and says, "Enough. Both of you get out of the room." Then someone says that even if Diella is a lost cause, they still have Esselin, and that's why it's better to let Diella disappear. The father says it's not his decision. Trying to make sense of it, apparently this maid belongs to Diella, and Reg is there causing trouble, saying she's going to bring ruin to the family, until the father suddenly puts his hand on his head and slams his face down onto the table. Dude, just letting you know, he already made the kid understand that he doesn't get to decide anything. Damn, Reg just won't quit. He says he doesn't care at all. Sooner or later, their father's going to have to choose. A little while later, our boy shows up, and he's not alone. This Aislinn girl asks if he's ever heard of her sister Diella. He says he only knows she's part of the Duplain family. That's it. And she's like, yeah, she's a girl they've kept hidden from the world. The door opens, and Reg walks in with Valerius. He says hi to Esselin and asks how life in Albestein's been. She says everything's fine and thanks her brother for worrying. Then he says they'll talk later because Reg's hurt. Derek, though, gives this look, noticing the blonde walking by. He also glances to the side and sees a maid crying. So now the scene's in the living room, with the father saying it's good to see Esselin doing well. She thanks him for all the support and says the boy standing next to her is the person who's going to take care of Diella. The father looks him over, not looking too thrilled. Like, yeah, he's gonna leave it for him to deal with. She says, alright, they're busy, so they're leaving. But he just goes, you stay right there. The protagonist looks back, then the father starts writing something and says, kid, you're way too young, 16, right? He says, yes, your majesty. The guy asks how much magic he knows. He answers that he knows the beginning of the basics of the first circle. Yeah, sure, liar. And the king notices immediately and says, don't lie to me. Humility isn't a virtue. The protagonist gets awkward, seeing the guy's aura pouring out. That guy was, at minimum, a fifth circle mage. Derek apologizes for offending him, and the king says it's fine. He understands why the boy did it. Too much talent can devour its owner. Still, judging by the kid's age and clothes, he doesn't look like the kind of tutor he expected. The protagonist admits he's just a mercenary. The king says that's fine. If Aislinn chose him, he won't say anything else. From now on, he'll guarantee him access to wherever Diella is kept. The little maid will take him there, so get out of here. But Derek says he wants to ask something. The king tells him to speak. So the protagonist says he's a mercenary, and he always finishes the jobs he gets paid for. But Lady Aislinn made a very specific request. Teach Diella magic so she can become a member of high society. The father asks why he's stating the obvious. The protagonist says, well, because of that request, he's going to need a favor too. The king doesn't get it, but the scene cuts to a UFO spinning around and almost smacking the maid in the head. The maid is apologizing to Miss Diella, but the girl says an apology won't do anything. She was supposed to get out of her sight right now, or she'll throw something else at her pathetic face. So yeah, clearly a difficult kid. While having tea, the father asks why she chose that Derek kid. Not only could they have picked someone noble from another family, it's also weird and rare for a commoner to be able to teach a noble. She says they've already tried almost every talented teacher on the continent, and they all quit. She was desperate for someone who could use magic, and since he's a mercenary, maybe he knows something nobles don't. Who knows? Now I realize it's Jaden. I mixed him up with the family's father for a second, and he's saying, well, Derek only knows a few things because his old master was a woman from a noble house, so maybe he has potential. Aislinn says at least he seemed graceful and polite for a mercenary. Jaden says she still has a lot to learn when it comes to reading people. She really doesn't know Derek is a mage who grew up on the streets. He's been working as a mercenary for a long time. Does she think he's still alive and getting missions because he's nice? So he gets to the door, knocks. No answer. He doesn't like that, so he goes for the handle. He opens it, says hi. Hey, my name's Eric. Excuse me, I'm coming in. She's still facing away and tells him to come closer. He walks up and suddenly she laughs and what the hell, she throws something in his face. He doesn't even react, just stone cold. The little girl asks what he's doing there. Why did they let a sewer rat into her room? Then she leans in and says she heard he's street trash. She grabs a chair, climbs up like an idiot, and dumps a whole bucket on him. Literal sewage water so he remembers his city, and he still hasn't said a word. He's just standing there silent and soaked, like a mute swimmer. He stares at her. She doesn't like his reaction. Then she kicks him in the chest and he drops like garbage. Arms crossed, she takes off her shoe, says he stinks, and throws it at him. Wait, what? No. What is this artist doing, showing a foot like that? You trying to go to jail? Somebody call the FBI and send them to this guy's house right now. And her father doesn't even know he put some street mercenary in charge of a daughter who's out here showing feet. This girl was born in the wrong era. These days, she'd be making billions showing feet on OnlyFans. He's all thoughtful, looking out the window, remembering what the protagonist told him. I heard Diella is hard to fix, so how much authority do I have? What am I allowed to do or not do? Then smack, right across the face. Damn, He drags her like she's trash. The protagonist walks up while she's sitting there in shock. He tells her, "Get up, bastard." So because we want to see what happens, we've got to go back 3 years, when he was with his teacher. Coincidentally, he asked her, "Master, what would you do if you had to teach someone ungrateful and difficult?" She says she'd try to understand the person, their struggles, and embrace them. He says that's too idealistic. What if the student is worse than that? She says the essence of teaching is guiding people toward a better path. If you can't do that, there's only one other option. He asks what, and she says fear. Back to the rosy cheek. The protagonist says from now on she's going to treat everyone with consideration and respect, and she should know he won't repeat himself. She stands up and slaps him back. Now it's turning into a slap war. She asks who he thinks he is, and he slaps her again. He warns her again that he won't repeat himself. The fight's on. But from the look on her face, she seems like she's enjoying it. Then she screams for the butler, saying there's a filthy guy in here hitting a young lady. The butler rushes in. My young lady, are you all right?" Then he turns to Derek and asks what he thinks he's doing hitting her and what happens if the Duke finds out. That's when the protagonist says straight to his face, "His Grace the Grand Duke de Plain gave me full authority to educate her however I want. I can use any method." The servant looks over like, And the blonde is basically thinking, oh hell, I'm screwed. A while later, Valerius is storming down the hall furious while Rag tells him to wait. But Valerius throws the door open, demanding to know where the filthy mercenary is. The protagonist is there like, "Hey, what's up?" Valerius goes to slap him. "You hit my sister." The protagonist says, "Calm down. My actions were authorized by the Grand Duke." Rag says Valerius shouldn't get involved. Isolin brought him, so Valerius isn't in a position to judge the kid. If their father gave permission, what are they supposed to do? But Valerius just says, "Rag, you're going to bed. Kid, you're coming with me. We're settling this now." Rag walks up to the protagonist and says, "Thanks. That little demon needed a beating. She's messed up. Now my sister's probably gonna hit you a bit, but it won't hurt that much. Don't worry." The protagonist nods and walks off. Rag stays behind thinking why this kid is getting involved in a lost cause. Or is it? Cut to a big doll and Valerius opening a room. He explains this used to be Dela's room in the main residence before she got moved to that other place. The protagonist sees a painting. Valerius says that's what she liked to do. He thought she was way more adorable when she was working on her paintings, but she never finished any of them. She always left blank spaces. Then out of nowhere he says, "Sorry I acted so emotional earlier." So he brought him into a dark room just to apologize. "Yeah, Blondie, back off." The protagonist says he doesn't care, but why bring him here? Valerius explains Diella wasn't always a girl who deserved to be hit, but at some point she became obsessed with having noble blood. That's why she was kicked out and confined to that village. He can't even understand what made her like that. While Valerius is talking about how she can't even master a 1-star spell, the protagonist starts picking up the books. Then Valerius puts a hand on his shoulder, begging him to save her. The protagonist says, "Hold up. Looks like she hasn't given up on magic, considering all the notes she left in these books." He figures it's all stuff from school. Valerius says that's what you'd expect from a noble. The protagonist looks to the side, sees another unfinished painting, closes the book and says fine, he'll try. Later that night, the girl is asleep when a bucket of water suddenly hits her and she jolts awake. The protagonist asks how she can sleep at a time like this. She wakes up furious, asking if he's insane. He just tells her to follow him. They've got somewhere to go. He drags her along and she asks if he's lost his mind, touching her like that. He hauls her past the maids who can't do anything now. He takes her out into a field, into the brush, and throws her on the ground with no mercy. She says it doesn't matter what he thinks he's going to do. Nothing will work. He says since she refuses to listen, he'll tell her an interesting fact. He has no intention of teaching her magic. He just likes hitting nobles. She's like, "What? Seriously? Nobody told me that." He says it's obvious. He suffered his whole life at the hands of nobles. That's why he decided to become a tutor, so he could use it as an excuse to beat noble daughters. Nothing is more fun than that. And he's about to draw his sword, saying he can't wait to hear her screams. She says he's crazy if he thinks he'll get away with this. He says he's completely sure he'll get away with it because she was about to be thrown away anyway, and in the worst case he pays with his life, but by then she'll be dead and won't know, right? Either way, technically his life isn't worth as much as a noble's, so he still comes out ahead. It's like some fifth-dimensional chess, because he knows she truly believes nobles are superior, and she stands up thinking to herself she's going to die. If that bastard catches her, she's dead, so she runs. She's getting all scratched up, saying she has to find a place in the forest to hide. Then she'll run back to the mansion, ask for help, and he'll be the one who dies in the end. But then a fireball appears. The protagonist is casting. She looks back, confused. That was a 2-star spell. How is trash like him doing that? He smiles and without hesitation launches it at her. The fireball barely misses and explodes next to her. She's frozen in shock. He says it's a shame he missed the first one. Next chapter, she's still running. She trips like an idiot, falls like a fool. A blue arrow shoots at her, and she dodges at the last second. She realizes again she only survived by a hair. Meanwhile, the protagonist says she actually moves pretty well. It's hard to believe she never leaves her room. She keeps sprinting while he just watches. She's desperate, wondering how long she's going to have to keep dodging. At this pace, she'll run out of energy and get caught. Then she looks back and sees him with his hand on the ground making this blue thing. Actually, he's trying to locate something. But it's hard because she grew up in these woods, and it's the same forest from the drawing. He says he could tell from the drawing that she felt the forest mana. To him, that was proof of but. Before he can finish, she comes at him with a rock. He pulls his sword and slices it in half. He stares at her and says he's impressed. Realizing she couldn't escape, she decided to counterattack. That was the best decision she could have made. Too bad she doesn't have the strength left to do anything else now. So what are her last words? She lets out a little laugh and asks why he thinks she's going to say anything. If that filthy guy wants to kill her, then kill her. She's not going to cave at the last second. Then he asks why she's so obsessed with being a noble, and she shoots back without that bloodline, what's left of her. She used to be tough as nails, and now she's going to get all dramatic, all teary, like, I don't have magic. The protagonist should have already pulled that sword and chopped her head off, just to change the pace of the story. But no, there she is, slumped on the ground, wanting to know what's left of her, if she isn't her bloodline. She's spiraling. He just watches, and oh, his aura kicks in. Is today the day? He raises the sword and says, that's it. He's heard her last words. Goodbye. The slash comes. She's frozen in shock, but something blocks his magic. Actually, no. Did he cast some ice magic under her? Wait, I'm confused. She made an ice barrier and he's congratulating her. And now he's going to act all polite. Oh, congratulations, my lady. I apologize for my ignorance, but let's say this was the method I found to awaken your magic. She's obviously furious, and then she suddenly starts crying there among the crystals, the moon up in the sky. A while later, he says it's confirmed. She belongs to the wild style. She doesn't really get it, so he explains that most nobles learn through the school of discipline. And even though both learning styles are still magic, the path to mastering one versus the other is completely different. Since she's wild style, she was pushing herself way too hard on theory, and that's why she failed. It wasn't just about using the wrong outfit, technically. It was like trying to put on a ring that was never going to fit your finger. She asks how he knew she belonged to that wild school thing. He says he saw that drawing she made. That made it clear to him that she could understand the flow of mana in nature, and usually most wild mages have that kind of talent. Alright, go on, get up, you can walk, figure it out. Well, you managed to awaken mana, right? But the road from here is long. Starting tomorrow, I'll teach you how to manifest your nature mana. She calls out to him and gives him a quick little thank you, like it's no big deal. No smile though, just let's go already. Next day, bright sun in the sky, she wakes up wanting to manifest her energy. For 1 second there's mana, and the next it turns into smoke. Immediately she yanks open her bedroom door and scares the maid. Yeah, sweetheart, who spills water all over her clothes. The maid freaks out because she knows they're going to make her clean the toilet with her tongue. She's apologizing, kissing the floor, but the girl's changed. She walks past, apologizing too, and tells her to be a little more careful. The poor maid doesn't understand what's happening. Looks like nobody's going to use her head as a drain plunger today. She keeps walking while the other maids go, wow, you didn't get hit? What a miracle. Meanwhile, the neighborhood Harry Potter is asleep. Then there's a bunch of pounding on the door. He's like, what is it now? The butler apologizes. The young lady wants to speak with you. She's there, hands on her hips, ordering him to explain how to control the mana she manifested. And when Daylon hears that, he's stunned. Hold on, she manifested mana? What? She looks at the protagonist and says, well, he said he'd teach her today, so the time's come. He slams the door and tells her to come back later. Daylon's all emotional about it, and she's just seething. She keeps kicking things, yelling, and he goes right back to sleep like nothing happened. Next day, the sun's up again, and the maids are walking around in shock like, did you hear? Diala isn't breaking plates every 5 minutes anymore. There's a rumor she manifested her magic. Is that true? Raig, the human gossip radar, hears it and immediately wants details. Wait, what did you just say? Back with the Baron. He's like, what do you mean? My daughter awakened magic? Valeria says yes. All the servants confirmed it. The Baron says, good, that's a relief. But Raig jumps in. Dad, don't get too excited. She just awakened magic. She's still trash. Valerius tells him to stop, that he should be happy for his sister instead of insulting her. The father watches, and Raig says they must have forgotten how tyrannical she's always been. It's way too small of a result, and nothing should change. Dad just sits there listening, and he won't stop writing. What are you even writing? A self-help book? Put the pen down for 1 second. Scene change. Bright sun again. The girl's in bed and the protagonist asks why she looks so down. She says she's not down, she's furious. He says acting cute like that won't help. She says she's not acting cute, she's furious. He tells her to stop pouting, because learning magic has steps you have to follow. She lunges like, I'm not mad. Then she sees his stare and immediately backs off, muttering sorry. He sits down and says trying to use her magic non-stop is only going to exhaust her. He knows from personal experience, rest is just as important as studying. And now that she's rested, it's time to learn. She's still mad like, fine, let's do this teacher thing. He asks if she wants the other method. She remembers last night and obviously says no. Better to learn the normal way. He explains that first she has to learn to manifest magic. Only when she can control manifestation will she be able to master the first star. But for wild style, you kinda have to learn the hard way. It's the kind of teaching you understand through freedom, not discipline. That's why it fits her. She asks what he means. He says her personality is a pain, and that's exactly what makes her affinity so high. She turns bright red and asks if he's saying she has talent. He says, well, since she raised an ice wall during manifestation, she probably has potential. She immediately asks if that means she's some once-in-a-lifetime genius. He says having some talent and being a genius are two completely different things. While they're talking, Raig is outside, watching with pure hatred. Next day, early morning, she says she's manifesting but still can't control it. Later, she shows she's feeling a weird cold in her hand. The boy just wants to read. Also, what are you even reading? That book never ends. It's 15 pages and somehow takes 70 hours. At sunset, when he finally gets 1 second of peace, she shows up saying she already told him to stay near the house. If he goes far, how is she supposed to ask questions? He says that's exactly why he's far away, so she won't come ask questions. But she says he needs to know she finally managed to charge her mana, and he has to take a look. The scene switches to Valerius. The door opens and the protagonist asks, "Looking for me?" Valerius sits down and asks how Dayella's been these days. The bored one says she's progressing pretty well. Soon she'll master 1-star magic. Then the blonde says his mother is about to return. Now that I think about it, this family didn't have a mom around, did it? Valerius warns that she's, let's just say, extremely hard to please. People in the mansion might accept him, but she won't like him being poor at all. Derek thanks him and asks if there's another reason he called him. The blonde goes quiet, stands up and says he's next in line to inherit the house. Because of that, he has responsibilities toward every family member and needs to treat everyone sincerely. Then he starts talking like he thinks he's a poet. And considering how arduous this work is for the dignity of the human heart that carries such depth, the thoughts that align, dude, shut up and get to the point. Even the protagonist asks what his point is. Suddenly Valerius turns around and blurts out, Dayella isn't going to play with him anymore. The protagonist doesn't get it, and Valerius is basically crying, saying he liked it when she was little and came to ask him to play and all that. He wants to know if there's a solution. Does Derek know what he can do to win Dayella over again? The protagonist is more curious why he'd be the one to know. Valerius says it's obvious she's been running around yelling his name all the time looking for Derek, and he's even been trying to make these little dolls to make her happy. Ugly doll from hell. He asks if this won't make his sister happy, and the protagonist asks if he's trying to curse the girl. Valerius almost cries. Back at the mansion, the woman arrives saying she heard about the boy. Apparently they'd secured a competent magic tutor. She's being polite, introduces herself as Miriella de Belle Duplain, and if it wouldn't be a problem, she'd like to send a thank you gift to his family. And Derek goes, ma'am, my father doesn't have a house. She's like, what? What do you mean? He says, that's right, I'm broke, ruined, what you'd call a commoner. She nearly has a meltdown hearing that. A week later, Iselin says bringing him there was a great choice. As a sister, she wanted to spend more time with Diella, but she has things to handle in Albistain, so she leaves the little girl in the boy's care. He kind of accepts, and Jaden says, Derek, she's putting all her hope in you. Give a more enthusiastic answer. They're already in the carriage waving goodbye, saying they can't wait to see how much he'll help Diella. And off they go. But then Iselin suddenly remembers something she forgot. Oh, she remembered the mother was coming back, and she forgot to warn Derek that this might be a problem. Jaden asks why that would be a problem. Iselin says their mother is kind of an avatar. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but the woman bursts in, runs over, slams her hands on the father's desk, demanding to know what this story is about, putting a sewer rat in charge of teaching her daughter. Miriella says, you don't understand. We're talking about Diellen. She's an incredibly precious girl. He takes off his glasses like, do you think I like that she has to learn from a commoner too? But every noble instructor quit, so what's the option? She insists she doesn't care. He brought in some filthy guy who used to get himself dirty with mercenaries. He says she has no idea how hard it is to find a competent magic instructor. Besides, Derek was recommended by Iselin. She covers her face and says it doesn't matter. He needs to have at least the minimum qualifications. Why didn't he bring his brother Flan? He was busy before, but it should be different now. He should be available. He asks if she's seriously suggesting the defense commander become a tutor. She must think running a city is a game. But she tells him it's dangerous to let their daughter's reputation in high society get destroyed too. He doesn't realize the teacher is the most important part, and for the most important role, they've got a commoner. Then the door opens, and the shameless blonde girl walks in. Mom, calm down, for the love of God. You came in here just to fight. But the mother tells Valerius to get away. This is an extremely important situation, and they need to resolve it. The most important thing is whether that mage actually has the qualifications to teach her. Then Raig appears behind them saying he agrees. The mother looks excited, and he says, yeah, a guy like that, a commoner among nobles, is not normal. Of course, if he has enough talent, Raig wouldn't see it as a problem. and that's why he's asking his father to let him test Derek's qualifications. If Derek can be defeated in a duel, the father cuts him off. Don't even try it. Tells him to stop with the funny ideas. But Reg says then he'll test Dara. Valerius doesn't get it. Reg says if Derek is really fit to be her teacher, then she should have gotten incredible results. I'll verify her competence in a duel. So he just wants to fight his little sister out of nowhere. She's younger than you, what's wrong with you? And apparently the father allows it, because Rag is already leaving the room while Valerius yells after him, Rag, are you out of your mind challenging your sister to a duel? Rag turns back and asks if he really thinks Diella has suddenly become a good person. He must have forgotten everything she did. Valerius says even so, they have to remember she's their only sister. Same flesh and blood, so they have to. Rag cuts him off, saying her flesh and blood is a curse on this family. Not only have her screw-ups already affected him, if she shows up in high society the way things are now, it'll be even worse. Valerius looks kind of drained, like that's exactly how he feels, and then Rag starts going off saying Diella's the one who crossed the line from the start. She was better off rotting away in that village. Then Rag's left full of hate. A bird lands on a branch, and she opens the door calling for our boy, and he's wondering why she's there so early just to annoy him. Out of nowhere, she throws a paper onto his book and says that if she loses this duel, he's fired. He gives her this bored glance and says, yeah, he already heard. Considering Rag is an experienced one-star mage, it's going to be really hard. She's pissed, asking if he doesn't have any other advice to give. If he doesn't come up with a plan, he's getting fired. Derek says he's a mercenary. He gets jobs and finishes them for money, nothing else. And as far as payment goes, he's already been paid more than enough, so he's not that interested anymore. She can't believe it and asks if he's serious. A week goes by. Banner up, we're in the arena. Blazing sun like 70 degrees and everyone's dressed for winter. The protagonist is over in the corner like some abandoned cat going, oh, you're here, your majesty. But the father's only noticing how weirdly calm the kid looks. Keeping your nerves under control in a situation like this makes it pretty clear he's not someone you can take lightly. He's not the one who's about to get beat up and lose the girl, whatever. He wouldn't care either. Meanwhile, Rag is trying to build hype by fighting his own little sister. It's the most embarrassing thing, climbing into that arena talking about how he's going to destroy her completely and make her regret everything. And she's walking up too, suddenly looking like Little Red Riding Hood. Flashback. She asks if he really doesn't care what's going to happen. He says she must have noticed her mana growth is on the right track. Even if she still can't properly use level 1 magic, it won't take long. She should remember she still has Duplain blood. She doesn't get what he means. He tells her to remember what he already said. For someone who learns the wild way, personal study is what matters, not someone else handing you knowledge. She suddenly breaks down crying like she's losing it, while he doesn't seem to care much. Looks like she got sad because she knows she's not a good student, but she still wanted to keep learning magic with him, not with just anyone. Then the protagonist comes in trying to talk with that little bit of swagger, saying sure he might not know noble duel etiquette. He's never been in one of those, but he knows exactly how to win a fight, because he was a mercenary. He's basically offering her a way to fight without mana, I think. And she starts remembering everyone trashing her, calling her a spoiled brat, which is completely true. I'd be one of those people too, talking trash about her. But she's locked in, and my hate for her is giving that girl strength. So here we are. She shows up in her little red look, probably hiding something. The story says that today she wasn't a Duplain anymore. She was just Derek's student, a mage walking her own path. Next chapter, the big banner goes up again. She steps up face to face with Reg. Dylan does the duel introductions. The obvious rule, whoever gets beat up and cries loses. So let's start, no stalling. But not before they learn about the protection circle, an accessory that activates right before the wearer takes fatal damage and cancels the opponent's magic. So that's what nobles use to duel. The protagonist never imagined they'd waste something that rare, just to play pretend. Since it lasts 10 minutes, Reg wants to finish before that. And there he is, the guy beating his sister to look cool, throwing out a bunch of glyphs. I can't understand any of it. Her cape flutters, arm up, a little orb gathers. Reg thinks it's a shame, but he'll have to send her back to that place. Goodbye, Diella. He sends a wind slash at her. She just stands there and does something nobody's seen before. One step to the side and she dodges. Clean. Even crazier is Rag going, how did she get out of my attack? He fires 2 more. But now the girl's moving like she's in the Matrix, slipping left and right. Derek notices Rag has some talent, but he fights like a total newbie. He's burning a ton of mana just to bend the spell's trajectory and try to land a hit. Meanwhile, Diella is just putting up Frozen-style walls. Rag isn't impressed, calling them ridiculous tricks. If one orb doesn't work, what do? Summon 3. That's the solution. He's gonna blow her up in one go and end the duel. From behind the ice, she remembers the protagonist saying, a mercenary's combat is different from a noble's. There's nothing fair or proper. The goal is winning. It has nothing to do with what you practice. And you might even get criticized if you win like that. But it's her only chance. Does she want it or not? She says yes, and we're back with Little Red. Rag keeps throwing his Wind Moon combo and keeps missing. Unbelievably. The story says there are mercenaries who always win even with less power. because they don't fight duels, they fight wars. Rag keeps redirecting, but she keeps dodging, and the story says people who've been in war know how to use every advantage, including the battlefield. To stay alive, they did whatever it took, even exploiting an opponent's carelessness. Another one of his attacks slams into a pillar. Dayla looks like she's getting a little tired, but Rag is getting angrier and angrier, and then he decides it's the end for her. He sent a spinning one from behind. It hits dead on. Smoke everywhere. The protagonist doesn't react at all while the mother screams, "My daughter. You know this is happening because of you, right?" She's telling the butler to stop it now. The girl's going to die, but the father tells her to sit down. The fight isn't over. She says it's insane. Dayla just took a full magic hit. He says she has to be fine because her accessory didn't activate. Meanwhile, he watches the protagonist and says he didn't even blink. Like, how would you see that when he's facing away from you? Oh, he's at an angle. Okay. He's impressed the protagonist is that calm. Does he have some master plan? Honestly, I don't know what's more cringe, the king thinking the protagonist is amazing because he's calm, or Rag trying to look cool by beating his sister. Rag is sure she took that wind blade, so where is she? He got distracted. Look where she is. She jumped down under the platform, almost got skewered in the butt. He backed off because survival instincts kicked in. Then he notices, wait, she's attacking me from under the platform. By the rules, if you're off the platform, you lose, but the butler says no, she's still in the arena. As long as she doesn't leave the boundary underneath, it still counts. Rag realizes nobody's used to this kind of cowardly fighting, and he realizes it too late because he almost gets nailed by a huge ice spike again. Ice shots flying everywhere. He sees she's going to keep doing this because he can't hit her down there. But it's obviously humiliating, she's not following noble etiquette. He looks into the hole and there she is, like a little rat in there, just staring up at him with pure hate. He says he's seen that look somewhere before. It was the same calm expression Derek had when Valerius grabbed him by the throat. He's sure his sister never would have come up with this plan. This is Derek's strategy. Now the most embarrassing member of the family decides to stop pretending and says fine, he'll play this game. Up in the stands, Muriel is like, wait, Dayla threw herself under the platform, in that filthy place full of dust? What are you doing, my dear? Stop this fight right now, it's shameful. And then basically, shut up. Let's watch and see what happens. Down below, the little yellow armadillo is just watching the mana flow. Rag tries to cast another spell from above, but almost gets his backside pierced again. Every time he starts chanting, he almost takes a hit. Then he glances to the side and sees a huge pole. Dayla notices the mana flow stopped. He's got some kind of plan, but she doesn't care. The moment he does anything, she's attacking. Dylan tells the young master not to do it. Rag starts acting like some Pirates of the Caribbean character, trying to hang off the mast, saying from there he can't be reached. From up there, he says, there's only one option left. He casts a spell saying the whole platform is going to be destroyed, but his shot hits the pillar. Derek is confused. Things start breaking. The pillar starts falling. Oh, okay, he's making the whole pillar collapse onto the platform. Great, that'll kill his sister too. And even crazier, the mother is worried about Rag. Yeah, she really loves her daughter. Smoke, dust, and in the middle of it, you can see that rat-like face. Rag starts preparing, casting another one of those arrow shots the protagonist used back in Chapter 0. But the blonde girl senses the danger, throws her arm out to block, except she's out of mana. She panics. The arrow is still coming, almost hits her in the head, barely misses. She pops up to the side and Rag gets confident. The closer she gets, the better for him. But she closes the distance so much her foot lands on his chest. So now he's getting physically beat up by his little sister. He drops to his knees, embarrassing. She even grabs sand off the ground and throws it in his eyes. I thought she was going to use that moment to kick him in the face too, but she goes for a climb instead. Rag wipes his eye and realizes if she's running now, it's because she's out of mana. It's ridiculous for her to go that far when she knows she can't win. But fine, this fight is about proving her worth. And if that's the case, he's going all out as the older brother. I've never seen someone lose so much aura. He climbs out of the hole looking pathetic. Even Dayla looks more respectable than him by the end. Blood's coming out and everything. And it looks like she's remembering what the protagonist said. Think of mana use like using a paintbrush. You have to gather the mana around you to create your artwork. That's what they call magic. She's there, moved by a few crooked words from that idiot. She closes her eyes to focus, energy swirling around, repeating to herself, mana is the paint and magic is the brush. I can feel mana flowing into my hand, and that's what I'll use to create my art. She's forming a spear. Delon and the mother are shocked that's first-star magic. And Rag goes, you really did it, Dayla. No idea if he respects her or if he's furious. The spear forms in front of her, and he's casting something too. He's about to drop a whole rainstorm on her. He says he'll strike first to guarantee his win. Dayla launches her attack and he answers with the arrow downpour. One goes straight into the other. Energy explosion in the middle of the arena, the whole family in shock. In the middle of it all, there's a big ball of mana. Rag and Dayla are both panting, while the protagonist is there as always, completely expressionless. And now, nice, let's go back a year for a flashback of those baby birds with their mouths open waiting to be fed. Dalen says, "My lord, we received a letter from the Belmiardi family. It's about the social gatherings. How do you want me to handle it?" The father looks through the door and sees the failure he brought into this world. Diella being useless like always. That's all he can think. But back in the arena, she's standing there with a barrier around her. So that was the necklace barrier activating. Right, her attack landed off to the side of Rag, and for the first time, the protagonist lowers his head for a second, thinking she lost. The loudmouth starts crying while the father watches from far away, and the mother wants to know what that was. It was supposed to be a mage fight, but it turned into something vulgar, a disgrace, unacceptable. The mother keeps yapping, "That tutor is useless. He's blah blah blah," but the father isn't thinking about any of that. He remembers maybe when he introduced himself as Raymond Oswald de Plain, saying it was an honor to serve your highness in that war. The one-eyed man said it was good to meet him. He'd heard a lot about the boy from his father. He really had eyes full of ambition. Raymond just thanked him. And now back in the present, he's watching the girl crying. What is he seeing himself in her? Ah, okay. He's noticing that her gaze has gotten stronger. While the maids crowd around the girl asking if she's okay and saying they should take care of her, she just slaps them away and walks off. She goes up to Raid with zero aura, and he only says she actually fought pretty well. Seriously, that's it. He says just that, and she keeps walking. The maids try to take her back to her room, but she heads off somewhere else. She goes to find the boy Derek, who as always just stares at her with no expression. Then she puts a hand to her face, starts crying, and says she lost. She even apologizes to him. So is he going to be a decent guy, or is he going to be some cold Sigma type? He stands up and says it's fine. Losing is part of it. Frustration is nothing but a step toward getting stronger. And oh my god, she cries again. Stop crying, girl. You already lost. Everyone knows that's enough. Come on, protagonist. Slap her like you did on the first day. Then her mom shows up. Oh, my daughter. Your knee. Diella, look at you. You've been through so much. It's okay. We'll treat your injuries. Diella thanks her and walks off with the maids. And her mom wipes her tears and goes to bother my protagonist, of course. He looks back and there she comes. You filthy commoner. Do you have any idea what you've done? What did you teach her? That one-star magic? Take this slap. She keeps going. Teaching those dirty tricks. You're ruining my family. Another slap. Trash like you doesn't deserve. She's humiliating him while the father walks up, just watching. Until Raymond slaps her cheek and tells her she's the one being vulgar here. She totally freaks out. What do you mean? I got slapped because of this commoner. He says yes, the boy is a commoner, but he's also their daughter's tutor. What father has the right to treat his child's tutor like that? He turns to the protagonist and asks him to forgive Miriella, because everyone in this world has their own way of showing love for their kids. The protagonist's cheek still burning, says it's not a big deal. Raymond turns and says, then they have something to discuss in private. They walk off while Miriella stands there furious. Obviously, in the father's office, he says the protagonist has been guiding Diella's growth in an admirable way. And as the master of the house, he wants the boy to receive a reward worthy of his work, the highest level of magic possible for an ordinary person. Does he have any interest in 3-star magic? The protagonist thinks this guy is saying exactly what he wants to hear. That's the little talent of a 5-star mage. But the protagonist doesn't know what he's really aiming at, so he won't miss the chance and says, sure. But then the guy basically baits him. You taught her that level 1 magic well, but that's nowhere near enough for high society. The protagonist shuts that down. I know, but there are plenty of people in Duplain who can teach her. She learned the basics. Now she just needs to keep improving. Raymond says he doesn't want an instructor for her. He wants a master. And the boy is carrying an ambition that ordinary people shouldn't even be allowed to have. He needs to understand how insulting that is to nobles. Raymond was letting it slide because Derek is talented. Hold on. Raymond understood that the protagonist wants to go beyond 4 stars. The kid dreams big, and that made the protagonist scared? I don't get it. Then Raymond says if the boy has intentions like that, he can't stay in this place for long. Thanks. Let's get out of this house already. I'm tired of this annoying blonde girl. Let's go help Big Sis. Right away, Raymond asks if he's ready to leave. The protagonist says yes. Raymond replies that his ambition is obvious, but he still needs to teach Diella a little more. So the whole conversation loops back around to Raymond offering the 3-star book again. Same bait as the next chapter. Anyway, he accepts, and here we are. He opens the door, walks down the hallway, grabs a book, and flips through it. Curious. He's shocked because ordinary people can spend their whole lives trying to get a 2-star book like that old guy who got beaten and died at the start. Meanwhile, this library is packed with 3-star books. At least that's finally a reason to be in this mansion. Pauline, the little blonde friend, must be missing him, the idiot. She'd lose her mind if she found out he's in a place like this. Next scene, this annoying girl is feeling herself because now she's a 1-star mage. Just like us, the protagonist doesn't care. She keeps pestering him. I'm an amazing student. I reached a new level. How can you not care? He stays uninterested, says it's good she recovered, and now they can go back to training. Also, next time she fights, it'd be nice if she didn't cry so much. She sits down awkwardly and says it was dust in her eye, and she only got dust in her eye because she thought the protagonist would get kicked out after she lost. He ignores it again and just says, "Good. Since you're motivated, let's move on to the next lesson." Big Head gets excited and says they'll focus on new one-star spells. She wants to learn human arrows, some kind of enchantment, ice spears, ice rain. But he says, like always, it'll be mana manifestation. She asks why. Weren't they going to learn one-star stuff? He says, yeah, one-star mana manifestation. It's the most important foundation. She gets disappointed, says fine, if he says so. Now that I think about it, have you seen that meme about the performative man? The guy who goes to Starbucks and sits there with his hand on his chin reading a book so girls think he's intellectual. The protagonist is exactly like that. And it's funny, before she used to throw water on him and insult him, but now she's all obedient. Still, she's kind of upbeat, saying it's fine if he says it's the next step she'll practice. And she does. Night falls and she's exhausted. He comments that he heard she's going to be really busy. Sergei says she'll have noble lessons now too. Etiquette stuff. He says she should be excited. Now that she reached 1 star, she'll finally get the real education nobles receive. She starts listing it. Botany, sewing, history, etiquette, foreign languages. Oh my god. Honestly, if I were her, I'd be furious too. Why learn all that? You could learn, I don't know, fireball, ice wall. Way cooler. She basically says that to the protagonist, and he says then she can do that, just learn magic. Since he's hired for a while, she has the advantage of being able to blame everything on him. She thinks it's risky because even if her father acknowledged the boy, her mother will keep causing problems, and sooner or later he'll be kicked out. He says he still can't understand why her mother wants her to be weak. Gayela explains her mother is probably afraid she'll become a mercenary. That duel proves she's not following the noble purpose. Nobles are supposed to follow. The protagonist says if that's the case, it's really easy to shut her up. Just make it so she can't complain. Next scene, the ownerless little goat is walking through the mansion, thinking about our boy, furious at that poor broke mercenary. She's already imagining her daughter turning into a mercenary, killing pigs, cursing at everyone. She's so rattled she can barely think straight. Then suddenly her daughter calls out to her. Miriella braces herself to see the little gangster the boy created, but instead she finds, oh my god, a super noble, adorable little girl. That's basically it. But now we're in the next chapter where someone's having tea. Someone says the last time they saw Lady Asilin, she looked discouraged. Asilin asks what's wrong and apologizes. And I can already see a new redhead showing up in this series. Her name is Elente, the second daughter of House Belmiardi. Is this another talentless dummy for our performative protagonist to teach? Elente says she heard Asilin save someone outside the noble districts. Asilin, looking all sweet, explains yes. She went to find a tutor for her younger sister. Elente thinks that's weird. Like she personally went to find a tutor? How? So it must be someone incredible if she went that far herself. But who knows? My god, there's a white-haired Diella version there too. Denise, second daughter of House Belthus. No way a man designed these women. I'm realizing now I think I fell into a trap. I think a woman designed these girls. It's way too noble girl coded. For a second, I'm like, am I reading a romance right now? What is happening? Anyway, let's keep going. I'm already here, only 2 chapters left. Let's see what happens. But if you think about it, the protagonist killed 2 goblins at the start of the series, and that's it. Denise asks how Diella is, and Asilin's like, she's amazing. My little sister has grown so much. She even awakened the first circle, she's so elegant. Denise listens and makes mental notes, because she knew Diella was the daughter they were hiding. Now she's curious, and now she calls up the next little victim, asking, so you found an incredible tutor? Asilin says yes. He doesn't have noble status, but his skill is exceptional. It was totally worth going all the way to that mercenary group in the city of Beldam to recruit him. The 2 of them are basically just filing that away, trying to figure out who this weirdo is, and Elente can tell something is really off. Supposedly Diella made every tutor run away, so much that the last one who taught her cried from emotion about how kind she was. Elente smiles and says she wants to know the name of this magical tutor. Yes, please teach the old mom already. Enough teaching kids. She says if he's that talented, he'll definitely become famous one day, so she wants to know his name before everyone else does. Islin gets all emotional and says the incredible boy's name is Derek. Back with Diella, she's lying to her mom saying the protagonist taught her etiquette. Sure, basically every question her mom asks, Diella answers, I learned it from Derek. I learned it from Derek, while thinking, that damn kid. A while later, her mom is outside like, that cursed girl. How many times is she going to say that name? I don't know what that bastard did, but this isn't right. You can't please this mother. Seriously. A servant says that lately Diella has been super polite, treating everyone kindly. The gardener says she's changed a lot. She's much better. Delon says, yeah, it's really surprising. He never thought he'd see her behave so politely. The mom gets even angrier. She wants to find a way to get the boy out, but everyone keeps praising him. She's sweating cold with rage, while at night our boy is sweating cold with talent in his mana training. I don't know exactly what he's practicing, but he's trying and it's not working. Then Rag shows up. "Hey Derek, sorry to interrupt your training." Derek turns around. "What is it? Why are you here?" Rag sits next to him. "I came to talk about Diella." Then he notices the protagonist with a 3-star book and asks, like, "Wait, are you going to learn that?" Our boy says, "Yeah, the Duke lent it to me to read." For a second, Rag thinks the protagonist is 3-star, but Derek says, "No, I'm nowhere near that. I'm just studying ahead, let's say." But Rag remembers the father telling the boy not to be ridiculous. That kid was the real mage. So Rag wonders if Derek is lying. He just says, "Yeah, he really is impressive." Then the protagonist asks, "So why are you here? You want to talk about the young lady?" Rag is kind of awkward because he tried to put on an aura act in front of his sister and got beaten. So he wants to give her a present and asks if he should sew a doll. Remembering Valerius's talent, Derek says no way. Rag gets embarrassed and says he figured, yeah, it's a terrible idea. Since Derek's there, Rag says he'll go train. But they end up walking together and suddenly Rag says he wants to thank him. The atmosphere in the house has improved a lot. Even Valerius seems more focused on taking care of the territory. So their father is proud and excited. Derek says it's hard to understand what Raymond is thinking. Rag says, yeah, he agrees. And he also realized he has to accept that people can change, especially when they're young. He should have noticed that earlier, but he ignored it. He thanks Derek again, and Derek is as always like, okay, thanks. Completely indifferent. Rag is praising the way Diella casts spells, saying it looks like a paintbrush, and the protagonist notices this guy can really pick up on details. Nobles really are different. Next day, we're fixing the annoying little blonde's hair. She's all happy thinking about Derek, and then the flower drops to the floor. She freezes, starts crying. The protagonist says that's exactly what she heard. Unfortunately, he doesn't have anything else to teach her. We're so sad you're leaving this sweet blonde. Yeah, sure. Next chapter, he's talking to her dad, and the guy goes, did you notice your daughter comes from the roots of savagery? Even among talented people, she was strong. And that's why if I keep influencing her, I'll end up limiting her. Basically, since she needs to learn naturally, he can't keep shaping her too much. Raymond replies like, okay, so the kid's saying there's no reason to stay here anymore. The protagonist says yes. A second of silence. Then Raymond stands up, walks to the window and says, it's fine. Thanks to him, a lot has changed. His daughter finally managed to grow. He, who's always been swallowed up by everything in that territory, failed at being a proper father. But now he feels relieved. He asks when Derek is leaving. And Derek says when Iselin comes to visit next time, he'll catch a ride with her. Raymond doesn't hesitate for even a second. Give me the bookstore key back now. The protagonist's like, alright, I'll return it and the grimoires too. But weirdly, Raymond says he doesn't need that. He only wants the key. The protagonist thinks it's strange that Raymond's letting him keep the grimoire. And honestly, same. Then Raymond says he's free to go. The protagonist doesn't say much, thanks him, and that's it, walking down the corridors. That's when he runs into Diella again. She's like, you showed up out of nowhere, and now you're leaving out of nowhere too? He says there's nothing they can do. She gets all sad and just asks him, please don't go, stay a little longer. But the protagonist steps closer, crouches down like he's 6 meters tall, practically eye level with the window, and says he has to go back to the mercenary life he's always lived. He'll keep studying magic, and she has to keep studying her magic too, and establish herself in noble society. Maybe someday they'll meet again. And if he's stronger then, maybe he can teach her something new. She's sad but admits that like always he's right. But at night that oxygen-wasting mess is in bed, miserable, remembering the humiliation she takes from the narrator's nobles. Everyone's like, you're the shame of Duplain for the love of God. She jolts awake shaking and the maid runs in asking what happened. Diella starts thinking about snapping at the maid just to act awful and maybe make Derek stay. The maid keeps asking if she's okay, and Diella says no, meaning no, she's not going to treat anyone badly. Oh wow, character development. Moving on. Next scene, they get to Big Sister's carriage. She offers a ride and says they're leaving. The protagonist looks back and sees what it means to be born privileged. 5 clowns staring at him. Valeros asks if he's really leaving. Rag says the work he did here wasn't easy. He changed a lot. Our guy thanks them, and then he sees the other clown standing there with her arms crossed glaring. He doesn't react and she realizes he's waiting for her to cry and beg him not to go. That was never going to happen. The protagonist is acting like he's 70 years old. Somebody tell the author he didn't write a reincarnated grandpa. The guy loves being mature, going, it was an honor teaching you, Miss Diella. I may not call myself your master, but I hope I was a good tutor. Shut up. She's like, just leave already, you stinky weirdo. He stays quiet. She stares, then turns away awkwardly and says, he better not get hurt doing dangerous things because that's the only thing she expects. Yeah, Derek, go do something dangerous. Go hunt a dragon. Go get injured. He tells her to be careful too, but she says she's an adult and can handle herself. He remembers saying the same thing. Then he remembers his tall little mentor, Katya, hugging him and telling him to think about what he's about to say because he's probably going to repeat it now. Like there's no reason to rush into being an adult. Diella gets all teary and soft, calls out to him and waves goodbye, totally emotional. Anyway, I was roasting him for being a sewer rat, but look at that, we're back, Ratatouille on the ground. We're in Ebelstein's commercial district. Boom, someone gets punched in the face. The protagonist walks into the bar. The guys are laughing, talking about getting someone killed. Who is it? It's Pauline, smiling at him, and he smiles back. Next scene, they're looking at something. Dude, is this a 12-star book? And the protagonist goes, show some respect. This one's 3 stars, okay? They're like, are you serious? Like he's lying. So he stole it from the Grand Duke. The protagonist says, no, I got it as a gift. Pauline's like, no way. Now the bastard's lying. Like they'd hand over a 3-star book just because he was an instructor. Apparently he told the whole story, I guess, because it's later at night. The protagonist asks if there are any requests, any commissions. Jaden answers, are you out of your mind? You just got back and you're already looking for work? He says he wants an easy subjugation job. His instincts are getting rusty. He had to play the proper guy for days reading little books. Jaden says, if that's the case, he should remember they're always short on mages around here. Of course there's work. Derek says, perfect. He'll be back tomorrow. Next scene, Pauline in the carriage, an orc coming up behind her, but it's already dead on the ground. Then they go kill some spiders. Got it. When it's the noble girl crying and walking around in dresses and having tea, we get 35 panels. Now that the protagonist is out here hunting and killing spiders, it gets summarized in 2 frames. Alright, artist message received. Pauline goes to sleep, and the idiot wakes up in the middle of the night to practice magic. He's trying to make a tiny little ice popsicle, but it explodes. No idea what's happening. He's exhausted. His hand's bleeding. He says he understands most 2-star spells now, but the wall to 3-star is way bigger than he expected. Daytime, afternoon, snowing, nighttime. Then the protagonist comes back with Pauline looking completely wrecked. Seriously, you let her get that filthy? Protect her. Jaden says it's insane they're climbing hot mountains in weather like this. But he just tells them to hurry up and come warm up because it's freezing. Meanwhile, some guy is laughing, saying they're idiots for trying to work in this weather. Then Jaden says, all right, enough suffering. Tomorrow is a rest day. Also, a request came in that's perfect for Derek right now. Since snow makes hunting harder, something came in that pays well and is easy, even if it's annoying. Looks like it came from another mercenary group on East Street. He's probably heard of the Belmiardi family. They're looking for a commoner to do magic combat training. Basically, they need someone to get beaten up. He just goes there, takes a few hits, comes back, gets paid. That's it. We arrive in the Noble District, at the training arena. And there she is, Alente, the redhead, asking who she's training against today. Lamphead says they brought in a little commoner boy. She's confused. Wait, you want me to beat up some rat-eating beggar? The old guy says it's part of her training. Plus, they're paying the boy well, so she can practice however she wants. No need to hold back. Alente asks if her training is just beating up poor people because she's a noble. The old guy tells her to stop thinking like that. Either way, it's good to know the boy can use 1-star magic. Alente says she doesn't care. She can use 2-star, so this is going to be ridiculous. The difference is like heaven and earth. While the tough guy putting on her boot, someone approaches. Yeah, come over with that smug face so you can eat a fireball. Hold on. She asks if he's the commoner who's going to get beaten up today. He stands up politely. Yes, my name is Derek, she says. She's Alente, while thinking she's heard that name before. Lamphead tells them to get into the arena, and she thinks it's weird. He looks younger than her. They face each other. She stretches while the protagonist stays calm. She asks if he at least knows basic magical duel etiquette. He says he's used to the fundamentals. She says fine. Then he should resist as much as he can, and she'll try to end it as fast as possible. She thinks it'll be easy. Shockwave, push him out, done. But then the protagonist lightly builds up aura. Tell me how much you want me to resist, and I'll match it. She's like, what the hell are you talking about? He says, I want to know how much you want me to resist. I'll adjust so I'm useful to you. Mr. Lamphead shakes his head like the kid is doomed. Alente laughs and says he talks in a funny way. How about he tries to resist with everything he's got? The protagonist gets serious and says, okay, he'll do that. Both their hands start glowing. She starts chanting in some unknown language, feeling herself, thinking it's ridiculous for some ordinary commoner to be arrogant like this. But she gets it. If a commoner learns 1-star magic, he probably thinks he's a big deal. Today she'll teach him the difference between them and nobles. She fires a shot at him. He stares, takes 1 step to the side, and she misses completely. She's surprised by his matrix instincts, and he asks for the next attack. Now she's getting angry, saying she threw a little hit and this bastard is already acting confident. Fine. Now she'll show the real difference. She slams her arm down, and a bunch of arrows rise from the ground. She manipulates them. Honestly, if you have to do choreography like that just to land a hit, you're cooked, but okay. She sends them at him. The protagonist just tosses a little pebble, redirects everything, slices the arrows apart, and they fall beside her. She's in shock. He used an extremely simple spell, but with insane control and precision. Lamphead is like, so this commoner really is skilled. No wonder they say he's a veteran among mercenaries. That lights a fire in her. She says fine, she underestimated him, and she's building aura too, a bunch of flaming arrows. The protagonist realizes she changed strategy. She's not just trying to hit him, she's trying to wreck the whole arena so he can't stay inside it. Honestly, not a bad plan. She throws her hand up and rains a billion arrows down on him. He knows he can't dodge that, so he raises a barrier and tanks it. Explosion, smoke, and there he is, untouched. But then, surprised, she rushed in to stab him with a magic lance. At that range, there's no time for a barrier and no room to dodge. He thinks her talent is insane. But then flash, he hits her with a flashbang right in the face. She's stumbling, can't see anything, black and white chaos. Where is he? Something passes close to her face. She didn't hear anything and doesn't know where it came from. Her vision starts coming back and she sees the protagonist flicking little crystals. She almost gets hit again. Then she realizes, when he used the flashbang, he also cut her hearing for a second. The only reason she didn't take that hit straight to the head is because he held back. He keeps conjuring crystals and throws 2 at her. She blocks, like no way, but he uses the same trick. When she opens her eyes, he's already coming in low. She smiles. Quick activation is her specialty, so he's walking into a trap. She's watching his hand, waiting for something to form so she can react. But when he steps down, she takes a step back, and it's his foot that activates, lightning bursting under his boot. She watched his hand too much and forgot to watch his feet. She almost ate a thunderstrike, had to defend, and gets blasted back. Lamphead is stunned. This kid has something off about him. He fights in a wild way. People who follow normal rules can't react to it. The protagonist barely met the redhead and already has her on the ground panting. She says he's interesting at least. As always, he doesn't react. Now she walks up and says she'll be honest. She thought he was mediocre. Someone who talks big but is nothing. But she saw the truth. She bows and says he showed her interesting things, and she wants to thank him. And wow, she's sneaky. She says that and stomps, sending lightning. But don't try to farm aura off my performative boy, because he just stretches out his arm and redirects her thunder right back at her. When you get distracted, leaning to the side, he approaches again, gives you a stare and a like on this video. That helps Mamoru make more juicy content for his viewers. Activate the cheeky little bell and I'm out.